Welcome to another episode of Muslim Billionaires. We're going to go straight into it. Today, I think I was a little motivated about with the idea of being and understanding who you are and what you're striving for. There's a process of just fighting, right? And I keep talking about it. It sounds really cliche when I talk about fight. What does fight mean? I'm not talking about physically when you need to fist fight people or anything like that. That's ridiculous. But I'm talking about from a metaphorical perspective, right? Where you're fighting everything every single time, right? From a spiritual standpoint, it's a spiritual warfare. Every waking day that you have, you're also fighting against Shaitan, the devil, the whispers, right? Shaitan's always game planning on you, right? The devil knows who you are, your behavioral traits. The person you stop talking to suddenly appears, or at least there's the interest that you want to speak to them again when you cut them off. Whether it's the opposite gender, whether it's being in a place where you're trying to outgrow some of your old environments. Something that really got to me as I, been going public is the whispers not only come from Shaitan, but it also comes from you, right? The whispers also come from the older version of who you are. A lot of us, we don't have that bridge, right? There's the older version of who you are, and then there's the newer version, right? But the bridge is non-existent. Right. The reason why is because we don't recognize a bridge that we can cross from being old, from understanding what the older version is and what the newer version is. Right. I always say the first step of self-development is accepting and believing there is a better version of yourself. There's a world outside of the world that you exist in, right? That's been created. This world has been created hundreds of years before you came into it, right? And if you have that perspective, you start to understand and realize how much you need to be humble, how much you need to cast a little bit of humility when you're in the process of getting better, right? Because you're not bigger than the program. You're not bigger than the program of the people that have systems that have been placed from large families from hundreds of years ago. If you read historically where banks have been created and built, where you've seen, businesses and companies that you go to, grocery stores, things like that, you start to realize it's over a century where these things have been created, right? And it's been passed down from every decade or decades, every single time to just navigate and adjust to what we are in, what society we live in now, right? So how are you bigger than that? Moreover, what's even bigger than that? The creator of those entities, Allah, God, right? You're not bigger than the program. And a lot of us conflate some of the small little achievements that we get or some of the dopamine hit that we get, especially the hype that we buy, or sometimes we buy into our own hype of people contributing to the worst version of yourself. But what is the worst version of yourself? Is literally being constantly distracted and not understanding there's value beyond the distraction that you see or that you continue to experience, right? The friends that keep bombarding you with the existence of, oh my God, did you go out and did you do this, you did that, and giving you valueless credit that doesn't get you paid, that doesn't get you anywhere, that doesn't get you any spiritual knowledge or anything like that, that doesn't give you an understanding of the world and how the world functions, right? Every minute and every hour you're spending on things that just give you dopamine hit, you have to understand that you're subtracting that hour from your life, right? Time is your biggest asset. I've been reiterating that for a long, long time. Time is your asset. So every time you think, hey, I'm spending time on something that's distracting me, you're also subtracting the time that you could have spent on educating yourself and building yourself into the newer version of who you could be. So what is the whispers I keep talking about? It's the whisper of, let's say you're going through chapters of your life, right? And then there's the older version of your life where this book is talking about all the terrible mistakes that you're making. First of all, foremost, a lot of us don't acknowledge our mistakes, right? I reiterate this a lot of the times. I always say one of the worst mistakes that you can make is not even knowing that you're making the mistakes anymore. You're actually defending it, right? Because you've done it so much times, right? And you put a lot of time invested into that to the point where you're protecting it, right? So a lot of us, when we're stumbling upon things that, especially if we're emotionally tied, talk to the person that's in a relationship, right? The haram relationship, the dating relationship, to talk to that individual and try to get them off the cliff of saying, hey, I don't think what you're doing is correct. I don't think the person this is for either a brother or sister. I don't think the person you're with is good for you, right? And try talking to them, right? They're not going to talk to you because why? They usually reveal these situations more than often, right? After months in time and emotional investment that's been taken, right? So if they invested 5-6 months privately, right, and then by the 7th month they reveal this person to you, and you can see the character of this person has character flaws, this person is completely unqualified for a long-term relationship, it's hard to drive them off the cliff and say, hey, please don't get off this, please, just come back, right? It's very difficult for you to do that. Why? Because this person's already put so much time in, right? I always say one of the worst mistakes to make is not knowing that you're making the mistake anymore because you put too much time in it. Anything you put time in, you're always going to be good at it, especially if you're emotionally involved with somebody that you're not supposed to be emotionally involved in it because you put so much time in it, right? I recorded a clip talking about how sometimes we don't even understand ourselves because we get so emotionally blinded by these relationships, right? That some of the mistakes that we make within it, we just bypass it, right? Not even the mistakes that we're making or the other person is disrespecting you in that relationship, right? Because sometimes you're just emotionally clouded, right? Or your judgment is completely clouded and you're emotionally involved. So it doesn't even matter what you're saying, what that person's saying to you. You're okay with it because of the loyalty that you invested in. So what is the issue with that? It's not the emotional part of it. Yeah, it enhances it. But a lot of us, what the issue that we don't recognize is the loyalty that we put in. Again, this is for our brother or sister, right? This is for a man or a woman, where sometimes the loyalty that we're putting into the person is a lot more valuable than whether the person's qualified playing that position. I put too much time in this. I used my resources. I gave my attention. I gave my emotional wherewithal to this person, right? I even introduced them to my closest friends, maybe even family, subhanAllah, right? So to that point, it's like, it's all in. I put everything in this basket. But then there's a cliche saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And it's true. Even this is where you have to apply this in a relationship. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It doesn't work that way. Now, some of the brothers probably listening to this say, oh, so does that mean I can diversify and talking to a multitude of women? No, there's a flip side to that as well, right? Diversifying your attention to a multitude of women at the same time, or even for sisters, I can talk to sisters about this too, you're also dividing your attention to multiple people, but at the same time, it's not innate in us to balance all that emotionally, right? Forget about the side effects that come from that. It's the fact that why is it so surprising if you attract somebody that's doing the exact same thing as you? I always say the people you attract is a reflection of the choices you make, good or bad. So if you're out here making all these bad decisions, right? You're more than likely going to attract somebody that's doing the exact same bad decisions, but possibly even far worse, right? If you're going to certain places at night that you're not supposed to be at, if you're having these unsolicited conversations with these people behind the scenes that you're not supposed to have, right? If you're garnering the wrong attention on social media publicly, right? What's so surprising if you're going to catch somebody that's doing the exact same thing as you? Plus, if God is not in the center of all this situation, what you're building for yourself, and you think it's the right thing because everybody else is doing it, right? What makes you think, why is it so shocking that there's a bad result that comes from it? What's so shocking that this person broke your heart? Again, this is applying for both brothers and sisters. Again, we have these challenges on both genders. I don't know what the point of just having these gender wars is. Like we're as close as you actually think. Yes, we're biologically different and everything else, but I can understand. But you have to understand from a societal perspective, we all face these same challenges, right? So a lot of what puzzles me the most, right, especially for me, when I see it, is like when you're making a mistake down the line, you need to start realizing, okay, if I make this mistake, right, why would I be surprised that that mistake is going to come back around? You can't get rewarded for bad decisions. That's not how the world functions. And that's what we continue to fight for, right? It's to understand that, hey, what is the better version of ourselves? What does that look like, right? How does that look like by not only relationships or personal relationships with other people, but how does it look like when we look ourselves in the mirror? There's a lot of accountability that has to come. I always say society leverages fear. Fear of what? Fear of confrontation, fear of accountability, right? Fear of missing out because your friends are going out. Now you have the fear of thinking, hey, what am I missing out on these situations, right? So a lot of us need to fight against that. But how do we fight against it? Well, the foundation starts with humility. It's having the conversation with yourself and knowing that, hey, well, I have to start blaming other people for my mistakes. It's not their fault. I'm past that stage, right? You're only going to understand your growth and understand your evolution as a human being and as a Muslim when you start to empathize with the people that are what they're going through and not make judgments of what they're going through, right? You haven't fully grown, even if you're not doing the same thing as the people around you or the people that you grew up with or what you see on social media, right? You haven't really garnered any growth down the line if you still make that judgment of what those people are or what those people are going through, because you quickly forgot what you were before you got to that position. Making that judgment, and it's hard. I'm not even saying it's not. It's difficult, right? Some of us, when we get something, God tests us with our faith or our gratitude, right? God tests us in 3 different ways, right? He tests us in our faith, our gratitude, and our patience, right? So a lot of us, when we're getting tested for our gratitude, God will give us what we're asking for. But then at the end of the day, are we arrogant to what God has given us, right? If you become successful in some sort of way and you have a functioning business in a company, right? Or you've separated yourself from a lot of people and how they're behaving, right? Do you feel like you need to judge them for from where you came from, right? So when you make that judgment, it's not the judgment of how they're behaving, it's more of you're also making the judgment of where you came from. That version of yourself, you could easily go back to that version of yourself. And this is why I say humility. Right? Next thing you know, when a week passes, you're back to square one, right? You had a few conversations with certain people from your past that they came out of the woodworks because they see some sentiment of or some small growth of you or success of you, and then suddenly the whispers come into your ear, whether it's from yourself or from Shaitan, right? And then you go back to where you were. But what happened to the judgment that you had 2 weeks ago? And what happened to the progress and the growth that you've had for the past year? It's very hard to get to where you're trying to get to, but it's very easy for it to break down. Super easy to break it down, right? That's why as much as you want to build something, you also want to protect it. You have to learn how to protect it, right? And that's not only from a spiritual standpoint, that also could come from a financial standpoint. Businesses have trademarks, copyright. You have to have lawyers. You have to learn how to license your company correctly, right? So when you talk to some of these multimillionaires or people that, if you study this a little bit more, you start to realize when you're building companies, it's not only learning the evaluation of a company and learning to increase the value of it and learning how to scale it, right? But it's also learning how to protect it. Protecting it from people that want to sue you for liability or try to protect you from any other thing that they can come up with. Learn how to protect. So protection is in addition to how you build up to yourself or build up to whatever you're trying to build to, right? Now, what is success? Again, this conversation really comes up a lot of the times. Success is really subjective, but for more than likely, from righteousness, from Islamic standpoint, success is already written for us. Success is finding the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's for us to strive for the pleasure of Allah. Right? Allah has created us, and understanding there's humility that comes with our belief, right? But then a lot of us think, okay, does success come with monetary? Is it a monetary thing? No, it's not. It's not money attached to it. It is not at all, right? Money doesn't change who you are. It only enhances who you before you got it. So you stop praying for those millions of dollars if you keep going to these places at night and talking to the wrong people. Because all you're going to get when you're granted this millions of dollars is you're going to enhance that lifestyle. What's the difference? You live in a small town, now you're going to go to Miami and start continuing to do what you were doing at night? Right? It's no difference at all. Right? It's just enhancing that lifestyle. And then that's when it becomes trouble, because you may not have come back from that. There's too many good things that, quote unquote, that we get from society that makes it seem like it's good because of the temporary feeling. And what happens down the line? People feel depressed. People start using alcohol, drugs. Right? So we've seen the story too many times. We've seen the movie. Watched this movie too many times and seen how it ended. But a lot of us have the struggle. Excuse me. A lot of us have this struggle sometimes that we think we can reinvent the wheel, right? We think we can change the ending of a movie that we watched too many times. If you watch the movie and you know the ending, it's the car is going to crash into the wall and it's going to explode, and yet we're still going through that movie and still thinking that, hey, maybe the ending will change. It's ridiculous, right? You watch the movie, you know the ending. Do you watch that movie thinking the ending is going to change? No, because the movie is already established, right? This is exactly how we should look at life, right? Understanding that people, we have to have an ability of pattern recognition, right? You have to learn about what the past is to learn about what your future dictates. And that doesn't even come from your own experiences. It's learning from other people's mistakes too. That's what makes you smarter. That's when we're making an understanding of who you are, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought prophets before us, right? And going through the struggles, there's a reason why Allah has brought Islamic history into the Quran. It makes a lot of sense, right? You have to understand the past into understanding how the world is and how the world functions and what the struggle could look like as you move on in life, as you grow in life, right? So a lot of us, if we're not understanding our own personal mistakes and not understanding historically how everything has been functioned, then what are we really doing? Who are you at that point? Are you just moving into the world thinking that everything is okay without really functioning the correct way, right? Without locking your doors and knowing that, okay, now not only do I understand who I am, not only do I have humility, not only do I empathize with people that are going through the same thing I've went through, but also try to help them along the way, but I also need to learn how to protect myself from all this too, simultaneously. Right? The spiritual ways of doing it from the Islamic standpoint. And then there's real life situation, learning how to protect yourself from it too, right? And it's straying away from people that may not contribute to you, to your personal growth at all. And it's okay, right? I always say it's not about disconnection, it's about distancing, because once you distance yourself, it doesn't mean you're disconnecting. Disconnecting means I'm going to garner all the knowledge and you're not going to hear from me again. That's selfish. That's absolutely selfish. A lot of people, here's the thing. A lot of us, and this is why I chuckle a little bit, because a lot of us keep saying we want to go have a private life, right? Make millions of dollars and have a private life. But then what? What happens if you have all the knowledge in the world to help people that are struggling in the same struggle that you've been through, right? God may have not given you whatever you're praying for, because you may not have the humbleness to know that even if you get it, you're not going to give it to any other person, right? Because you're just keeping it to yourself. Is that the right thing to do? It's not. I'm going to end the episode by saying hard work, right? You need to work hard. Wallahi, I'm being serious. You need to work super hard to get to where you're getting to. Every single thing that's in front of you, right? And I want everybody to hear this. Every single thing that's in front of you, all the goals that you're striving towards, right, has a lot of value, right? Because if it wasn't hard, that means it would have been easy. And if it's easy, every single person would have done it. Every single person would have accomplished it, right? Nothing in life, whether it's even through Islam, whether it's through making as much money as possible, whatever it is, right? Nothing in this world doesn't dismiss hard work. You need to work hard. You're always at war. And if you're not fighting against some of these temptations and fighting against all these things, or at least having certain plans and systems in place, then what is surprising about what the results that come from it, right? A lot of us are just sleepwalking without learning to know that we can actually wake up. A lot of us close our eyes and thinking that we could just walk through the darkness, knowing that we can have a flashlight. We can open our eyes. We can have surrounding people that could also have a flashlight that also open their eyes. But how many of us are sleepwalking through everything? Sleepwalking, literally sleepwalking. A lot of us are even snoring, right? And that's the thing. Open your eyes, let's work hard, and let's strive for greatness. But at the same time, let's all be humble and not have the judgment of other people or what their struggles are, especially if you came from that. Because everybody has come from somewhere. So I'm going to end the episode right here. I'll see you guys in the next episode, inshallah.